As I told a friend of mine once who asked me why I joined Mercury, I think if I'd been alive 150 years ago, I might have wanted to go out and help open up the West.
The Interplanetary Podcast. The exploration of space for the benefit of all mankind. Your hosts here in London, Matthew Russell and Jamie Franklin.
Wow.
Yeah, baby. Do you know who that one is?
Big Gus Grissom.
The great Gus Grissom, who unfortunately died in the Apollo 1 fire, but was born on this very day, April the 3rd, 1926.
American colonel, pilot, and astronaut. I mean, not too shabby, eh?
Nope. Space legend.
Space legend.
Trailblazer.
How are you, Matthew? Are you keeping well in the lockdown, sir?
I am keeping well in the lockdown. I'm very, very fortunate to be on the coast, and
rumour has it, Matt, that you found a secret beach. Is this true?
I found a secret beach. Yeah, I did.
I assume you weren't wanting to be disclosing the location.
No, but it's about half a mile from my house, and yes, it's totally secluded. You have to walk down some pirate steps, I tell ye.
My God.
You enter onto this extraordinary alien landscape. It's unbelievable. And that's what I love about Ilfracombe and the surrounding area is these alien landscapes that you get from the strange way that the rock juts up from the ground. It's amazing.
Well, Matt, if I know our literally tens of listeners in Ilfracombe area, they'll all be trying to find the secret beach. So
yeah, well, they can hunt.
Be careful.
They can hunt. Jamie, talking of English legends.
Oh yeah.
Did you know that Tim Peake is about to star on The One Show?
Get out of here. What, as a host?
Not as a host. He's going to be one of these roaming reporters who's going to give a little film clip each week.
Well, I love that.
Yeah, the first one's going to... Guess what the first one's going to be about?
Space.
Well, yeah, obviously they're all going to be about space, Jamie, because he's Tim Peake, the astronaut.
Let me guess, Matt. Is it going to be about self-isolating?
It is going to be about self-isolating.
Oh, what a guess.
So, yes, he's going to be drawing from his 6 months on the ISS to help people get through these dark times.
Absolutely. Well, he knows a thing or two about being locked up, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, it's amazing, isn't it? Because you think the ISS isn't really bigger than your house, and at least you're locked away with your family. You can go for walks to secret beaches, etc., etc. Imagine being stuck on the International Space Station for 6 months. It does put it in perspective, doesn't it?
It does, actually. Yeah. So there we go. Make sure you check that out.
Yeah, I'm actually quite excited about that. The first time, I think this will be the first time I've watched The One Show for many, many years.
Matt, if I said to you that Venus is going to appear inside the Seven Sisters, what would you say to me?
I'd say this is one of the most exciting astronomy events for a while. I quite love the Seven Sisters, or the Pleiades, as some people know it. One of the most beautiful objects in the night sky.
What a cluster. Beautiful,
isn't it? And it was only while I was looking at this that I realised that, you know the car manufacturer Subaru?
I do.
Think about their logo, and their logo is a little star cluster. And the Japanese, the Japanese for Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, is Subaru. The constellation was originally called Mutsuruboshi, meaning 6 stars. And you'll notice in the Subaru logo, it only has 6 stars. So for some reason, the Japanese could only count 6 stars, whereas the rest of us could count 7. So that's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting. Oh, God, I love Japan.
Yeah, so tonight, on the 3rd of April, Venus will actually be inside that cluster. So it's a really great chance to go out. And if you don't know what the Pleiades is, when you look up in the night sky, it's the tiny saucepan, really, really bright bunch of stars that looks beautiful, but through a telescope, and through a powerful telescope, you can actually see that it's slightly nebulous as well.
I tell you what, and we've been having, luckily, some rather clear skies of late, haven't we?
Yeah, we really have. And as a result, there's been some beautiful pictures from England of the ISS and Starlink going over. So
there we go.
Like streams of Starlink and the ISS going over, with Venus often photo bombing in that as well. So, yeah.
Matt, do you know what was born 60 years ago this week?
I do, because I did a little Instagram post of it, because I stumbled upon the TV picture of the Earth from space from a satellite called Tyros, and it's considered, yes, the birth of modern meteorology. Space
Happy birthday.
Weather reporting. Yes, the first Earth sensor, basically.
Matt,
60 years?
I am a SpaceX addict. I need my fix. What can you tell me?
SpaceX, the boss is Elon Musk. Drink.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
What else?
No, I can tell you this week. It's been a Boston week for SpaceX. NASA chose them for one of these missions to the moon with this new bigger version of Dragon, a kind of elongated version of Dragon, which I
think good.
That's exciting, and I think that's been covered pretty much by everyone else. I'm not going to bore on, although we should maybe have a sort of deep dive on that on another episode.
100%.
But yes, they also released a user guide for their Starship rocket.
Oof.
And it's got some numbers in there which are really interesting. So it's fully reusable Starship can deliver 100 metric tons to LEO, 21 tons to geostationary transfer orbit. That is monstrous.
That's big.
Yeah, that's big. Of course, one of the really cool things about it is it can refuel in space. So then it could take another 100 tons out into the solar system. And as we'll see in a second,
that'll keep it going for a while.
That might be quite cool. Then you've got the size of the actual payload fairing, 8 meters wide and 22 meters long. So that's like a massive shed.
Yeah, it is.
That's absolutely huge. And of course, it could carry up to 100 people with private cabins, large common room areas, storage, solar storm shelters, and viewing galleries.
And I'm lighter than the ordinary human, so probably have 200 of me.
Oh yeah, you could probably have 150 Franklins.
Yeah, that's all you need to, colonize Mars.
Yeah. Jamie, looking at how Elon Musk is building these starships out in the desert, and we've now got SN3 looking pretty good, actually. When do you think we'll see the inaugural maiden voyage with a super heavy and a starship on top? When do you think that's going to happen?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to go with 2023.
Ooh. See, I did a poll.
What about yourself?
Well, I did a poll with the patrons because I was interested to see, how enthusiastic they were. And of course, everyone's very enthusiastic about Starship. Let's face it.
Yeah.
This is a game changer. I mean, when it does fly, it really will be absolutely monumental. So the patrons think 2022. They were all coming in with 2022.
Wow, that's early.
So a couple of years away. And I mean, wow, that would be absolutely incredible. However, I'm going with 2025.
It's probably a safer number.
Well, I'd be much more comfortable if my money was on that. So, let's see. In 2025, on the maiden voyage, I'm going to be sitting here all smug.
Well, we're recording this now, Matt. So
exactly.
You can,
I'll be able to play this back.
You play it on a loop.
through a PA system out my window.
Yeah, just to annoy the patrons.
They're already annoyed with me.
Yeah, of course they are. If you'd like to be annoyed, please go to No, we'll do that later.
I tell you what, it's been actually really quite a fascinating week for patrons, etc. We've had a few new patrons. Welcome on board.
Oh,
One of those.
well, that is surprising in this strange time. Welcome.
Well, one of the patrons, Tupper, I'm going to play a little interview with him.
That is excellent news. We are going to be speaking to him.
Well, I'm going to play the little interview, Jamie. I did.
Here we go.
The Interplanetary podcast, putting the ace back into space.
So I'm on the phone to Tupper Hyde, who contacted the podcast about sock burning. Hi, Tupper. How are you?
Hey, good, Matt. I'm calling you from Severna Park, Maryland. It's right near Annapolis. It's cloudy here, and we're all shut down from going into work.
I'd already got some emails with voice readings of Annapolis that we horrendously got wrong. So,
Annapolis. Right?
Annapolis, yes. Yeah, I think we called it Annapolis or something daft like that. I can't remember. It seems so obvious now you say it. Apologies.
Annapolis likes to call itself the sailing capital of the world. They probably compete with Australia and Newport, Rhode Island, and San Diego for that title, but certainly one of the most sailing-intensive places around. So this sock burning tradition started with this guy who worked in a boatyard in 1977, a particularly cold winter, and was sick of wearing these socks and decided to burn them and celebrate with some beers, and that tradition has continued in Annapolis, but also sort of among the boating community worldwide on the first day of spring.
And so no one wears socks until it becomes autumn, is it?
I would say no one wears socks with their boating shoes. Certainly you wear socks if you go to work or if you're doing things with work boots on or whatever, but boating shoes have like a light sole without a black bottom, so it doesn't, mark the surface of the sailboat. And people are usually sock-free in their boating attire, right?
Well, it's confirmed, and Jamie's skepticism is laid to rest. What do you do for a living? Because this is probably more interesting.
Yeah, the overlap in the Venn diagram between sailors in Annapolis and people who listen to your podcast is probably pretty thin. But I'm the chief engineer at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland.
So, currently, I'm assuming you're not going into work.
Yeah, that's right. I've been on work from home since about March 11th. NASA had this pretty good response of stage 1, 2, 3, 4 that they've been pretty good about communicating to everybody. Different states and different cases have appeared. Each of the centers has progressed through the 1, 2, 3, 4. I think all the centers are either 3 or 4 now. 3 is you can still come on center to work on certain projects if you can't do it remotely, and 4 is the center is closed, and there's pretty much no work going on at the center other than the minimal staff to keep the satellites operating and to keep the facilities safe.
It was a similar sort of situation to when the government had their shutdown. Is that right?
Yeah, obviously for very different reasons. We've still got 95% or so of the workforce still doing everything they can remotely. I've been on lots of telecons virtually over the last 2 weeks, some with, hundreds of people. So
yeah. Well, what are you working on? What do you normally work on over at Goddard?
The big project that you'll be familiar with is JWST, James Webb Space Telescope. All of its hardware is now out at the Northrop Grumman facility in El Segundo.
Wow, so that must have been a pretty special project to be working on.
Yep, it probably is the nation's largest science project.
Yeah.
And gonna return great science, looking back to the light of the first stars turning on.
How long have you been working on James Webb?
I was a grad student when I worked on some concepts for what was the next generation space telescope that became Webb. So that goes all the way back to 1995. So what's that, 20 25 years.
Wow. Yeah, you're heavily invested in James Webb then.
Our center does a lot of projects. We probably have 40 or 50 projects going at any given time. Earth science, the weather satellites for NOAA, heliophysics, astrophysics, including James Webb, and planetary science. We build a lot of instruments and some of the missions that go out. OSIRIS-REx, which is at Bennu right now, keeps making lower and lower passes over all its candidate landing sites and getting set up, which to make this tag sample grab, which is going to be a little bit more sporty than was originally envisioned.
Of course, yeah. Well, yeah. Can you explain why it's a little bit more sporty?
Obviously nobody had visited an asteroid like Bennu before. The ones that had been visited before had big pockets of more sandy type soil, and that's what they expected there. So you could have a fairly large uncertainty on coming down to make the tag and still be assured that you were going to get, some gravelly, rocky type sample. But when they got to Bennu, it's much more bouldery and less gravelly than anticipated. So picking a site where you can get access to a good sample while avoiding, house-sized boulders that are on each side of you meant that the tag had to be at a much tighter uncertainty radius than what was done before. So the trick to fixing that was to navigate off the features as you're coming down. Obviously, the light delay from Bennu to Earth and back is too far to joystick it in with somebody on the ground. But using natural feature tracking, you can pick up the objects in the camera in 3D as you come down, and all the modeling says we can hit that tighter circle now. So when pressed to solve a problem, people get creative, right?
As an engineer, do you get to put on the hairnet and walk around a lot of these spacecraft and actually get up close and personal?
Not as much as I'd like. The technicians are the experts, and they're the ones who are actually putting the pieces together. Some of that happens at Goddard, and some of that happens at the various spacecraft industrial sites around the country. OSIRIS-REx had all its final assembly at Lockheed out in Colorado. But for the things that happen at Goddard, I try to get in and get a look, but I'm not directly contributing, so no sense having extra people in the clean room.
No. Yeah, particularly not. So you didn't manage to get in the clean room with JWST.
No, JWST. Interesting. During the time it was at Goddard was when we were installing all of the 18 mirrors onto the primary mirror, and then installing the instruments into the instrument carrier, and then installing that instrument carrier into the back of the telescope. So that complete payload, if you will, of telescope plus the 4 instruments was all put together and tested at Goddard. But all that work was done in a really big clean room that was built for Hubble a long time ago, and it has really good viewing windows. So, we get lots of tours through with great views of when JWST was there, just because it's so big. A lot of times, if you I lead tour groups through there with school kids and stuff, and you're pointing at some instrument or small spacecraft in a big room, and it doesn't look so big, but JW was so big, it was obvious how impressive it was. And for a part of its build, it was turned so the mirrors were facing the viewing gallery, and you could see, the reflection off those big beryllium mirrors in the segments.
Man, well, thanks very much for taking the call. It's great to actually speak to someone who's hard at work making all these amazing NASA missions happen. Big fan over here. I've got to pick you up on a point earlier on. You do know that Britain's pretty good at sailing too, don't you?
Yep.
I better say that because I live in a sailing town as well. Not that I'm a sailor. I come from Birmingham, which is just about as far away from the sea as you could possibly be. But yeah.
Well, you should wander down to the docks on the first day of spring. See if you can get a sock burning going with a keg of beer.
I've got to miss the first day of spring. Maybe they do it already. I'll find out. So thanks very much. Right. I'll leave you to get back to your. It sounds like dogs and birds in the background.
Yep. Thanks, Matt.
The Interplanetary Podcast, putting the ace back into space.
Actually, Jamie, you were wrong. They do burn their socks.
I can't believe it.
When it comes to ruling the ways, we don't rule in outer space, unfortunately. London-based OneWeb have filed for bankruptcy.
I saw that. That's a sad day.
Yeah, so sailing the very high seas has been a bit of a problem. Yeah. And
it's not surprising in this time, is it, Matt?
No. Well, of course, it's massive disruption to all their supply chains and et cetera, and with COVID-19. Now, do you think, Jamie, a load of companies will fold under COVID-19 and it will sort of... I think that there's a kind of... It saves the embarrassment of going bust without that excuse. So I think a lot of companies will throw in the towel as a result, and maybe they needn't have. Or maybe they could have struggled on for a bit.
Yeah, I agree with you somewhat. I think it's just made a lot of people reevaluate what they want to do. Maybe it's time for people to kind of look at that. But
it's going to be big changes. Yeah, I mean, it's a very tough time for the space industry and any other industry, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's when you're trying to get large amounts of capital, this really is a bad time. So poor old OneWeb, it'd be very interesting to see how that actually plays out. Now, Eric Berger reported on this a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't realised how harsh Gwyn, the steady hand at the tiller, Shotwell from SpaceX, how tough she'd been on. This is what she said. She said, "If you're thinking about investing in OneWeb, I would recommend strongly against it. They fooled some people who are going to be pretty disappointed in the near term."
You sound like Nanny McPhee. I love it.
Maybe Shotwell does. Who knows?
Brilliant.
Maybe we should try and get her on for an interview. What do you reckon the chances are?
I think we've ruined that. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how we remain so independent. Independent of thought. Jamie, I thought would be a really cool thing because I follow old Mr. Kipping, David Kipping, who we've had on as a guest on Twitter.
Kippers,
and he tweeted a paper that came out on April the 1st, and I must admit I did think it was an April Fool's joke at first. The paper in question was called "Resolving Exocontinents." That's continents on exoplanets, Jamie, with Einstein ring deconvolution.
Blimey, that's a hell of a title.
It really is a hell of a title. It's a great paper, and the PDF is all in black as well, so it's quite cool to look at. Wow. I put a link in the notes, but we won't get onto that just yet because I decided, well, let's have a look at the kind of context that this is all in. So I thought, let's do a telescope special. What do you think?
I love that. Let's do it.
Now, the thing that I noticed, Jamie, is that if you really wanted to be considered one of the science gods, you really have to have an association with a telescope.
True.
So Galileo, obviously tick. Newton, tick.
Huge tick.
And Einstein, you might not know this, but you'll see how Einstein is also associated with the telescopes that I'm going to talk about.
Matt, how good was Einstein? I mean, come on.
Well, no. How good was Galileo, Newton, and Einstein? I think we can all agree that
Imagine them two on a science quiz pub team. I mean, they're coming in first, aren't they? There's no question.
Yeah, I reckon Galileo and Newton.
They're winning the meat raffle every time.
I don't think they'd get on very well. I think
Definitely
Einstein
not.
was a lovely bloke. Newton, apparently not so. Wonder about Galileo. It's hard to tell.
Well, imagine Tycho Brahe being the fourth member. It'd be carnage.
Oh, my
There'd be
God.
noses cut off, everything.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, here's a little rundown of telescopes. We can really say that the telescope started in 1608.
Okay.
And this was from a Dutch guy called Hans Lippershey. And he was the first person to patent a refracting telescope. He's unlikely to be the inventor, but he said he saw a couple of kids playing with two lenses and making things seem closer. Now, his patent allowed for a telescope that with ×3 magnification. So this is for looking at things like trees in the distance and stuff like that. So he didn't really think about its other uses. Now, in 1609, this invention had sort of spread through Europe pretty quickly. Everyone was pretty excited about it. And Galileo went, ooh, do you know what? I'm going to build my own. And he didn't look at the paint, and he just understood the principle and made a telescope that was ×10 magnification. And boom, modern astronomy was born. And so, yes, Galileo was the first person to see the moons of Jupiter almost immediately, and the first astronomer to view old Subaru through a telescope.
Definitely. What a moment. Imagine seeing that.
Oh, my God. So, yes, that's just incredible, isn't it? So, but the problem here is refracting telescopes obviously use glass lenses, and glass has a problem. Once it gets too big, it sags. Not only that, if you think of the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon cover, I think you're aware of it, then obviously light enters a thick glass prism and is split up into rainbow colours. Now, obviously the same thing happens as it goes through glass. Different colours get bent by different amounts, so you get this thing called chromatic aberration, which isn't good. So glass has a limit. Has a limit of what you can do. So people started thinking, well, instead of using glass, why don't we use mirrors? And in 1668, this is 60 years later, Isaac Newton built the first practical reflecting telescope, the Newtonian. So, Jamie,
huge day.
Yeah. So when I tell you that I have a nice 8-inch Newt, don't freak out this time. Okay?
You've said that before to a lot of the locals in Ilfracombe.
Yep.
You still got that court order?
I've got a couple of restraining orders.
Yeah.
This, of course, there was the achromatic lens in 1733. That kind of corrects for your colour aberrations. Then you've got your silver-coated mirrors and your aluminiumized mirrors. 1857, 1932. So those were improvements. So all of these kind of slight improvement meant that your telescopes were getting bigger and bigger, not on an exponential level, however, just incremental. And
yes.
And so stuff was getting bigger. So there is a kind of practical maximum for all of this. So it seems that the maximum physical size for a refracting telescope is about 1 meter. So a big 1 meter glass lens is about as big as it gets, 40 inches. It's pretty big. But
that is big.
Yeah, and there aren't many sort of refracting telescopes like that. But the largest single mirror in the world...
Here we go, drum roll.
...is the 8.2 meter or 323 inches of the Subaru.
Hang on a minute. Is this in Chile?
No. The VLT telescopes are also 8.2 meters, and they are in Chile. No, the Subaru is on Mauna Kea in Hawaii.
Oh, of course it is.
Yeah.
Where would you rather go, Matt, to look through one?
Oh, no. Do you know what? That is super dream. Both are a dream trip, Mauna Kea and Chile. I'd just absolutely imagine it. Just imagine it, how dry and
I've been very close to the border of meters from the border of Chile when I went to Peru and Bolivia. But I didn't step over into Chile because didn't have enough time. But my God, what a beautiful part of the world.
Well, yeah, we really need to do that. We are planning on a 2021 American road trip. We've got
I'll tell
to do
you
that,
what,
Jamie.
when we're allowed out of this cage, we are going to do some travelling,
Are we
aren't we?
coming out of this cage.
So if there's anyone listening in Hawaii or Chile, please let us know if we can come and visit you, say hello, do an interview or two.
Yeah.
There we go.
We're going to be like one of Joe Exotic's escaped tigers.
Oh dear, what an absolutely incredible documentary.
My God, that's
still
insane.
Can't get over it.
It's just ridiculous. Anyway, Jamie, so the 20th century has been let's say that these are single mirrors, but the great thing about the mirror ones is that they have invented this technology of putting cells of mirrors together, so you can make much bigger refracting telescopes, reflecting telescopes, by putting these cells of mirrors together. Even James Webb telescope has this cells of mirrors, but they're incredibly hard to make. You have to have the precision of the mirror is insane, but you also have to have computer controlling the shape and the position of these cells at all times. So they're phenomenally complicated pieces of machinery. So the 20th century is dominated by segmented mirror design. So the largest at the moment is the Gran Telescopio Canarias, or the GTC in the Canary Islands. Yeah. That is a whopping 10.2 meters or 409 inches. But, of course, there's a whole bunch of telescopes that are being built right now that are going to supersede that. So you've got the Large Synoptic Survey Telescope, 8.4 meters. That's first light planned in 2020. The Giant Magellan Telescope, which is going to be a 24.5 meter aperture and a 21.4 meter light gathering area. So that's 2021 for first light and proper completion by 2025. James Webb Space Telescope is only 6.5 meters. I say only, but it is going into space. So that solves all those atmospheric problems. Then you've got the European Extremely Large Telescope.
I love these names.
I know, which is 39.3 meters. That's 2024. Then you've also got the 30-meter telescope, which is 30 meters, planned for 2027. But the overwhelmingly large telescope, the OLT, was cancelled. So
absolutely gutted.
So if you actually think about this, and this is something that I read about in David Kipping's paper, which I'll get onto in a minute, which is really cool. So there's a spiraling cost to all this. So as you sort of get double the resolution, that the cost increases quadratically. So that's a major downside, and this is often called the crisis in astrophysics. Physics.
Whoa! So
it's a horrible scenario. So, for example, the 25-meter GMT was $1 billion. The Giant Magellan Telescope, $1 billion.
What about TMT?
The TMT, the 30-meter telescope, is going to be $2 billion. So you can see, just for that extra 5 meters, you're having to double your money, right? So a 100-meter telescope would be about 35 billion. So it's completely out of the range of any budget that you could possibly think of, much larger than NASA's budget. And a James Webb Space Telescope is a huge chunk of NASA's budget. So space observatories, 10 billion for the James Webb. And so that just goes to show that the future larger telescopes, the funding of them is almost impossible. Have you heard of LUVOIR?
I haven't.
The Large UV Optical IR Survey Telescope, which is basically the successor to the James Webb. And so that's supposed to be launching in the late 30s. But getting the money for it. But that's in the process of being looked at. But I mean, that will be able to look at things like the epoch of reionization, the galaxy formation, star and planet formation,
That's big.
Yeah, and it will be able to look at exoplanets and see if they're habitable or even inhabited.
Whoa. Now you've piqued my interest.
Yes.
Can you see me smiling, Matt? Can you see it?
I can see you smiling. So yes.
Oh, yeah.
So what do we do about this? What on earth can we do about this? Is there another way of bending light, Jamie? You can obviously bend it with mirrors. You can bend it with glass. But can you think of another way that you can bend it? And I'll give you a hint. Einstein's general relativity.
Matt, is it anything to do with Einstein's general theory of relativity?
It is, Jamie. Well done. Yeah.
Is this also, Matt, what we came to be excited about when the photo of the black hole came into our lives?
It is, but the photo of the black hole was done through interferometry.
Oh, yes.
It's much harder with visible light to do that, I believe. So you really have to go for single lenses rather than multiple telescopes and statistically gathering the data to get a sharper picture. What else? We can use gravity to bend light, right? And a scientist called Eshelman wrote a paper way back, I think in 1979, where he said, and the paper's called Gravitational Lens of the Sun, its potential for observations and communications over interstellar distances. Seminal paper. And of course, 100 years ago, almost exactly 100 years ago, back in 1919, Eddington confirmed general relativity because he saw the deflection of starlight around the sun during the total eclipse on May the 29th. So the era of gravitational lensing had begun, and now it's 100 years old exactly. So yes, sun bends the fabric of space and objects follow a curved path around it, the orbit of the planets being a particular case of that. But light is also bent by the curvature of this space-time, as Einstein predicted. The gravitational field of the sun can act as a spherical lens to magnify the intensity of the radiation from a distant source, right? And so if you put a spacecraft at that sort of focal point, then you can communicate over interstellar distances. Communicate, remember, you can observe, eavesdrop, and communicate as if you're inside a sort of using similar equipment as you can on interplanetary distances. When you're in the solar system without this magnification of using the sun, you can communicate and look at things through telescopes. You'd pretty much have the same thing, but be able to do it with exoplanets if you use the sun as a magnifier.
That is crazy.
So
my head's bleeding again.
Yeah, so at a 203 gigahertz wavelength, you're talking about a magnification of 1,300 trillion times magnification.
1.3 quadrillion.
That's right, yeah. Wow.
Quick maths.
Yes, so yeah, of course the difficulty here, Jamie, and this is the absolute kicker, is that this spacecraft, this focal point that the sun creates is 550 AU away.
What?
Yeah, that's bad news. So yeah, 550 AU orbit also takes 15,000 years. So essentially what happens is you can only use this spot to look at one object, because if you want to maneuver to another place to see another object in the night sky, it would take you hundreds of, if not thousands of years to sort of go around to start looking at different things. And just getting out to 550 AU, by the way, is ridiculous. So just so you know, the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 probes that left in the 70s are only 148 and 123 AU, respectively, at the moment. So about a fifth of the distance, or a quarter of the distance at best. So, yeah, getting out there is really, really difficult. But
hashtag space is hard.
Hashtag space is hard. Of course, you also got to take into account things like the solar corona, which obviously limits the intensity of the radiation that you can observe. So yeah, you got to look at it's quite difficult. But an Italian astronomer Claudio Marconi, he actually suggested that you should be able to obtain detailed images of the surface of extrasolar planets. Now, if that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what is. So I did a little bit of maths, Jamie. I did a little bit of maths.
Here we
go. Genuinely got me a little spreadsheet out. So if you want to look at Kepler 438b, which, as you know, is probably the most Earth-like exoplanet we know about. So if you want it to have 1,000 pixels across its surface, you've got a diameter of 7,135 kilometers, and it's about 640 light years away. So you can calculate its angular size, which is about 1.2 times 10 to the minus 15 radians. And that black hole that you mentioned earlier on that we photographed was only, and I put only in question marks there, not in question marks, in speech marks, only, moving my fingers, 1.2 times 10 to the minus 10. So that black hole actually appears 5 orders of magnitude larger than Kepler than Kepler 438b does to the eye. So yeah, 1.2 times 10 to the minus 15 radians is very tiny angular dimension. So the resolution of your telescope, you would need if you use the sort of normal formula to work out the resolution of your telescope at optical wavelength, say 500 nanometers, you need to build a telescope with a diameter of about 208,000 kilometers. So that's bigger than Jupiter and about a quarter of the size of the sun. So,
oh my God.
So it might be worth using the sun as for gravitational lensing, because obviously building a telescope the size of bigger than Jupiter is quite frankly preposterous, and as
that would cost a fair penny.
It would, particularly if 100 meters costs 35 billion and it's going up quadratically. I think we can safely assume we can't afford to build that telescope.
Put it on my tab.
Even with the Patron money pouring in, we wouldn't be able to do it.
This is it.
But nevertheless, so this is one of the reasons why actually people looked at space missions. So there was one space mission on the table called the Fast Outgoing Cyclopean Astronomical Lens, or focal. Yeah. And that was a space telescope at 550 AU.
There we go.
But there's lots and lots of problems, as discussed.
One or two.
But there are some bonus uses of focal. It could be used to measure stellar distances by parallax, because you're 550 AU away from Earth. So you could probably precisely measure every star in the Milky Way from there.
That'll do it.
Yep. So that would be monumental as a science catalogue. You can study the interstellar medium, the heliosphere, observe gravitational waves. You can check for variations in the gravitational constant. You can observe cosmic infrared background. So quite a few amazing things. But this paper that came, just to make it even cooler, this paper that came out on April the 1st this year, a couple of days ago, resolving exocontinents with Einstein ring deconvolution.
Oh, yes.
So instead of using the entire telescope as a single pixel detector, you could measure the Einstein ring's total brightness at various locations, and using that information, the azimuthal variations in the intensity of the Einstein ring, that additional information they prove in the paper, or set about to prove in the paper, could improve the reconstruction performance of a sparsely sampled and time variable image. To sort of basically use it, looking around, Yeah, so this when you're looking at the light from this object behind the sun, using the sun as this gravitational lens, it doesn't really appear as a nice picture at all on your detector.
No.
It looks like a ring around the sun. Now, this ring isn't really a ring; it's actually known as an annulus, which is a the little white a polo, I suppose, is a 3-dimensional annulus, and the little white paper rings that you reinforce binders with.
Sure,
that is as well. And so, if you look around that annulus and look at various intensities, you should be able to work out a little bit more detail using this kind of, it's really complicated, this paper, in terms of how it adds up all this information using matrices and all this kind of stuff. But the general idea is that you can use just a little bit more information in the Einstein ring, the way that the information is spread over this annulus, to try and eke out a little bit more detail.
Got it. I'm learning.
Yeah.
I might have to listen to this again, Matt. It's one of those episodes.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. When you view the Earth from a geostationary weather satellite, over the course of the day, something like the North American continent will have a different thermal response depending on the changing solar insolation that it has. So over the course of the day, it's absorbing heat and putting out heat. And you can see this effect from geostationary weather satellites, which are currently exactly 60 years old, the technology. So over the course of the day, you can see this variation. Now, this is what they want to tap into in the Einstein ring. They think that they'll be able to do that and find these thermal signatures of continents on Earth-like exoplanets by this close examination of the Einstein's ring and these little sectors around the ring, and check for these variations. And so, they do this matrix based approach. There are some huge problems with this, because of course a planet is spinning while you're taking measurements. It's also orbiting and all those kind of things. So it's going to be extremely difficult to extract this information out of this circle of light. But they think that this method actually will help do that.
Thank God.
Yeah. So, but of course, we're still dogged with all the same problems. How on earth you get a spacecraft, a telescope, an observatory out to 550 AU? It's absolutely ludicrous.
It really is.
It really is. And of course, so it's really, 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 really hard. Maybe you could put a spectrographic mode into this, so you could look for things like photosynthetic vegetative regions with a red edge. Or
who wouldn't do that?
Or looking for extraterrestrial cities, looking for greenhouse gas emissions, or maybe artificial illumination during night. So you could maybe look for those kind of signatures in the signal.
Matt, if you did find an extraterrestrial city, what's the first thing you would do to communicate?
Well, you could actually use this station to communicate with them, because you could use the sun to magnify your signal. To send them a signal, so you wouldn't need such a powerful transmitter. So in that sense, it's quite cool, isn't it?
Really is.
But I don't know what I'd say. I'd say, guys, can you hear me? And then obviously we'd have to wait a few years while it came back.
Guys, if you'd like to become a Patreon, head over to.
So you could send that message. They'd probably go, "What the hell is he talking about?" But here's the other thing you could do as well that solves the only one target for this thing, is that you could send it and look at, say, the TRAPPIST system, the TRAPPIST-1 system, where you've got multiple planets. Look at each of those planets in turn, so you get a bit more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
But Jamie, can you think of another way that you can bend light?
Oof. There's a host of different ways, Matt. Have you ever tried burning anything with a telescope in the garden?
I have accidentally burnt things with a telescope in the garden, yes, while doing solar observations. Not my eye, thankfully. But but yes, Jamie, have you ever looked out in the evening and noticed that the sky changes colour?
Yes.
Red sky at night, shepherd's delight.
Shepherd's delight.
Red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning. Whoosh. So, yes, obviously, the Earth's atmosphere also bends light, because as light comes in from space through the almost vacuum of space, it hits the thicker atmosphere, and as light, whenever it hits something more dense, it will bend. And so, yes, the atmosphere of the Earth bends light.
There we go, of course.
So, David Kipping, his paper that came out last year is called The Terrascope, on the possibility of using the Earth as an atmospheric lens. So this refraction through the Earth's atmosphere has been known since the 18th century. Cassini, 1740, mentioned it while looking at lunar eclipses. And, of course, von Eshelman kind of hints at it in his 1979 paper as well. But David Kipping, when he was studying at Cambridge University doing his masters, he studied a phenomenon called the green flash. Do you know the green flash, Jamie?
Isn't he a Marvel character?
I don't think he is. There's the Green Lantern and Flash.
Getting them confused.
If you merge the two together, you get Green Flash. Now, I spent last summer trying to see the Green Flash, which is basically you look out and you look at a sunset, and just as the sun disappears, you might get to see a tiny green flash. Now, what's happening is...
Wow, I didn't know this. What's going on?
So what happens is the light's getting bent, and of course the blue light gets the least bent. So it should be the last light that you see, but it isn't, because blue light gets scattered in the atmosphere very, very quickly. So the next one down is green, and that's what you end up seeing. So obviously you see that the sun gets redder and redder and more orange as it goes down to the horizon. Then, just as it's dipping under, you get to see this green flash. And
I'm now going to spend the rest of my life
trying to see the green flash.
The green flash.
Well, yeah. Well, it's actually a phenomena that's actually really, really cool. And you can.
How rare is it?
Well, there's a few YouTube clips of people filming it, and you just get to see this little green element just as as it goes down. Of course, there's so much atmosphere that you're looking through there that the seeing is terrible. So it's very, very hard to capture through photography. Plus the fact, it's quite hard to point your camera at the sun anyway. So one of the things that David Kipping's really kind of, I really like him because he's got this real vibe of, he's thinking outside the box. He's thinking about what natural phenomena can you co-opt as technology to help you. And obviously, when we had him on the podcast, he was talking about his halo drive. Which was using black holes as a means of propulsion. So, try and think of something in the universe that could help you. And there it is.
Piggyback on that. Yeah.
Piggyback on that. And then he takes it one step further and he thinks, well, if an advanced civilization has figured this, what might that look like? So with the halo drive, it would mean that you could tweeze apart black holes and actually pull them apart or push them together using a halo drive as well. And maybe that would be a signature of advanced civilizations. So anyway, when he was doing the maths for his green flash phenomena, he did an illustration of the Earth in front of the sun, a solar eclipse, but the Earth as the eclipser. And there was a green ring that he photoshopped in around the Earth, and that's because at some point out in space you'd be able to see the green flash as a kind of similar concept to an Einstein ring, except it would be refracted through the atmosphere of Earth. So that is pretty cool. So the terrascope looks at using Earth and the Earth's atmosphere to bend light, and it turns out that if it's an Earth grazing line, you're about 2/3 of the way to the moon. So you don't have to send a spacecraft that far away. And in infrared, which I find phenomenal, that it's really cool that in infrared that you can put a telescope on the moon. It's exactly the right place for it to be. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
But Kipping wants to put a telescope out on the Hill sphere, which is where the Lagrange points are. So we've talked about that quite a bit. I almost feel as though we should have a Lagrange drinking game as well as an Elon Musk drinking game.
We'd be drunk.
Yes. So the light's only going through the very upper part of the atmosphere. So that means that you don't lose it going through clouds, and the turbulence is less of an issue. It doesn't get scattered like we were talking about, this blue light scattering through the atmosphere. You can get rid of all that. So his calculation is for a 1 meter Hill radius telescope, you get an amplification of about 45,000 times magnification. He's saying pretty much you can halve that if you want to factor in all things like daylight scattering, etc., etc. So he reckons that it creates an equivalent 150 meter optical infrared telescope. That's not bad, is it?
That isn't bad at all, is it really?
So that would give you basically this. It would solve the crisis in astrophysics. I mean, obviously, there's a whole bunch of things to iron out, but hey.
Apart from us solving that.
I was hoping that you were going to solve it this weekend.
I mean, I've got nothing else to do.
That is true. And if anyone's going to do it, you can do it.
It's going to be the Franklin Russell rover.
Wow, Jamie, there's lots of things to iron out in those things, but I think that's very exciting. I think David Kipping is a very exciting astronomer.
What a great guy, and just so forward thinking. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it is cool.
Cheers, Kippers.
And I love the fact that he's followed on from a sort of master's thesis that he'd sort of put behind and then has gone back to. It's really cool.
Do you reckon he minds that I call him Kippers? If you're listening, let us know if that's annoying, and we'll I'll stop immediately.
Oh, Jamie.
Yes,
I think that wraps it up.
It does.
This was longer than I thought it was going to be.
It's a long one, 50 minutes.
A bit of telescopes.
Now, Matt, feel free to edit this out if you don't agree, but I think, given the circumstances, that we should be donating all of our Patreon donations for the foreseeable future to a charity. Shall we just say the National Health Service or something like that? Because I think they need it more than us two idiots. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll put it out to the patrons and see which charity they would like to
let us know what's closest to your heart, and we'll divert it that way for the remainder of this lockdown. Let's try and help as much as we can.
A lot of our space friends have been doing precisely the same thing. Our previous guest of Dragon Aerospace, they're making face masks for the NHS. So good on them.
I think it's incredible. Yeah, my sister is a nurse, and she's obviously having a tough time, but she is an absolute hero along with all of them around the world, helping us out. So yeah, thanks for donating. We will find out from you where you want it to go to.
Yeah, it's a massive big up from the Interplanetary podcast to all of those on the front line of what is a pretty nasty crisis, let's face it. But everyone stay safe, and remember it is going to be over, and this is a brilliant time to be out looking at the sky. So there are some definitely every cloud has a silver lining.
It really does. But remember, keep 2 meters away from Jupiter at all times.
And remember to try and look at Venus in Subaru.
Oh my God, yes.
It's going to be cool.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye, Spotcats. Take care of yourself.
See you soon, bye.
See you soon, bye.